The UCC debate in India, China implements the unity law. On a cold morning in Beijing, a school bell rings, children sit in the classroom, and the teacher starts a new lesson on the board in just one language. In the room there is a Tibetan child, a Uyghur child, and a Mongolian child too. But now the center of the lesson is not their local identity, but a shared Chinese identity. The fear begins right here. In the name of national unity, can a child's mother tongue slowly be pushed out of the classroom? And the curiosity is, why is the world considering the law that Beijing calls a tool for unity to be a signal of cultural assimilation? From the 1st of July 2026, the law on promoting ethnic unity and progress has been implemented in China. In simple language, it gives legal shape to China's one country, one identity policy. In India, people have been debating the Uniform Civil Code, meaning UCC, for a long time. But China, distinct from this, implemented a more comprehensive and more controlling ethnic unity law. Here it is important to clearly understand one difference. India's UCC is an idea linked to personal laws like marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption. China's new law is not a civil marriage or inheritance code. It is a law extending to language, education, media, community life, online content, and national identity. Therefore, calling it like India's UCC can only be a headline comparison, not an exact legal comparison. China's law looks like a much bigger step toward identity uniformity. The Chinese government says that this law will strengthen national unity, stability, and patriotism. Beijing describes it as a law connecting the country's 56 ethnic groups like one family. In China, the Han majority is the largest population, and there are 55 officially recognized ethnic minorities. These include Tibetans, Uyghurs, Mongols, Hui, Zhuang, and many smaller communities. In the language of the government, this law strengthens Chinese nation community consciousness. But in the language of critics, it can weaken the distinct voice of minorities. The root of the story goes back to the Regional Ethnic Autonomy Law of 1984. In that old framework, there was a promise of limited autonomy, language, and cultural space for minority regions. The new law does not directly abolish that old law, but at a practical level, it gives more power than before to Beijing's central identity policy. This is the reason why experts say that now, instead of local autonomy, a centralized national integration policy can be more powerful. The biggest impact can be seen in education. According to the official text, schools and educational institutions will have to make the national common language and script the basic teaching language. In China, the national common language means Mandarin and the standard Chinese script. Now, Mandarin learning will be pushed right from preschool. The government says that this will connect all students with the national economy and modern opportunities. But minority communities are asking, what then will happen to our mother tongue? Tibetan, Uyghur, and Mongolian languages are not just communication. They are the foundation of history, songs, prayers, stories, memory, and community pride. When a language retreats from the classroom, not just words leave, an entire generation slowly begins to distance itself from their grandmother's stories. The official law also says that the learning and use of minority languages will be respected. But in public display, the national language must get a prominent position. This is where tension arises. Respect on paper and priority in practice, both things go hand in hand, but a balance on the ground is not always easy. Article 15 and education provisions are the most sensitive for minority regions. Because in Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia, language identity also gets linked with political identity. In Inner Mongolia, protests were seen over language policy changes after 2020. Many families feared that the Mongolian language would remain just a subject. Now such policies can get stronger legal backing from the new national law. This exact thing is troubling minority activists the most. The law is not limited just to schools. It extends responsibility to families, media, publishing, internet platforms, community organizations, companies, and government bodies. Parents and guardians have also been told to foster a feeling of love for the Communist Party, motherland, people, and the Chinese nation in children. Because of this, even the private family space becomes part of the national identity project. In all three places, home, school, and society, the same political message can be repeated. Promoting Communist Party history, New China history, socialist development, and Chinese nation history in education also comes within the law. Critics say that this is not just teaching children a language, but it is also teaching them an approved national memory. For China, this is not a sudden step. In the Xi Jinping era, the policy of Sinicization and a shared national identity has steadily strengthened. In Xinjiang, there has already been international criticism regarding detention, surveillance and religious restrictions on Uyghur Muslims. Beijing often responds to these allegations through a security and development narrative. In Tibet, identity linked with language, religion and the Dalai Lama has long been a sensitive issue. The tension between cultural preservation and state control there is old. For Mongolian communities as well, language is not just a regional feature, it is a question of survival. When a textbook changes, the memory system of the incoming generation changes. The new law promotes inter-ethnic contact and mutually embedded community environments. The government describes it as a path to social harmony and integration. Some observers believe that this could mean encouraging mixed communities, cross-regional mobility and inter-ethnic closeness. But critics fear that this will dilute minority-majority boundaries, and small ethnic identities can slowly absorb into the Han-dominated national culture. Regarding inter-ethnic marriage too, China's policy has long been viewed through the lens of social integration. The new law gives a broader environment to this blending approach. The government may call it natural harmony. But if social pressure gets linked with state policy, then personal choice also begins to seem like a political project. Now comes the most controversial part of the law, Article 63. This speaks of legal responsibility, extending to organizations and individuals living outside China's borders. Article 63 says that if any overseas person or organization carries out an activity against China that damages ethnic unity or creates ethnic division, there can be legal responsibility. This clause became an alarm for the EU, US, Taiwan and human rights groups. The question arose whether Beijing could target critics on foreign soil as well. A Tibetan activist gives a speech in London. A Uyghur researcher publishes a report in Washington. A Mongolian diaspora member talks about language rights online. These people fear that Beijing can interpret such activity like ethnic division or separatism, especially if the wording is kept vague. China says that this law is for protecting sovereignty and national security. Beijing claims that this is not against international practice. But Western governments are linking it with the risk of transnational repression. They say that no third country should try to suppress overseas speech with its domestic law. Extraterritorial reach was seen in the Hong Kong national security law too. Therefore, critics fear that China is building a new legal weapon. There is responsibility for online platforms in the law as well. If content is considered as inciting ethnic hatred, discrimination, or damaging unity, there can be a duty to stop and report it. This provision might look positive in the name of hate speech control. But in an authoritarian system, the same provision can also become a tool to suppress dissent and identity demands. If any minority group demands their language rights and the state considers it against unity, the legal risk of that demand can increase. This exact ambiguity is the biggest one in this law. Who will decide the boundary between unity and separatism? The government, court, police, or the party system? In China, courts do not function like independent democratic systems. Therefore, rights groups fear that vague legal language can give a very wide space to state power. The government's benefit argument must also be understood. Beijing says that connecting diverse ethnic groups into a shared identity will reduce separatism, conflict, and instability. China's leadership views border regions especially from a national security lens. Xinjiang, Tibet, and Inner Mongolia are not just cultural areas, they are strategic regions too. For Beijing, language unity makes governance easier. With Mandarin, education, the job market, administration, and migration can become smoother. Minority students knowing Mandarin can get access to nationwide universities and jobs. This is the practical pro-development argument of the law. But the question is whether the opportunity will be gained only by losing the mother tongue. Can a child not become a strong national citizen while being bilingual? Rights groups say that in an inclusive model, both the national language and minority language can survive. The problem occurs when one language starts to dominate all the others. China's law talks about respecting differences, but along with that makes promoting commonality central. The entire debate rests on this balance. If a common identity is voluntary, it can become a bridge. But if a common identity is imposed, it becomes cultural pressure. The impact of this law will not remain just inside China. Diaspora communities, foreign universities, journalists, and human rights organizations are also watching it carefully. If an academic conducts research on Tibet or Xinjiang, will Beijing consider it a hostile activity? This fear can chill open discussion. International criticism is also sharp for this reason. The EU expressed concern over cultural, linguistic, and religious rights and opposed its extraterritorial application. The US also called it problematic, especially regarding overseas pressure and the CCP's ethnic unity agenda. Taiwan viewed it as linked to intimidation and coercion. China often calls these criticisms foreign interference. Beijing says that ethnic unity is China's internal matter, and outsiders should not politicize it. This is the global clash. China talks about sovereignty, the West about human rights. Both call themselves right in their own language. This story is interesting for India because here too, the question of unity and diversity arises in the UCC debate. But the political systems of India and China are very different. In India, spaces for debate, court challenges, elections, state politics and public opposition exist. After a law is made in China, the options for public resistance are very limited. Therefore, the impact of an identity law there can be more direct and strict. The debate in India on UCC revolves around personal law equality, gender justice, and religious freedom. China's law revolves around ethnic identity, language, and political loyalty. Therefore, keeping both in the same box would be misleading. But both cases ask a major question: where does the boundary of national unity end, and where does cultural freedom begin? If the state demands too much uniformity, diversity starts to fear. If parallel societies form in the name of diversity, the state starts to fear instability. China has answered this fear with control. Beijing believes that a one-nation consciousness is the path to long-term stability. But minorities can say that stability does not come without respect. If identity is silenced, peace appears on the outside, but resentment can increase on the inside. The immediate impact of the law can be seen in school curricula, official signage, media messaging, and government training programs. The long-term impact will be deeper. In which language will the coming generation think, which history will they read, and what will they consider themselves first? This is the real question. If a Tibetan child cannot read their language fluently, they do not just lose grammar. They lose the path to reach their ancestors. If a Uyghur family fears expressing their identity in public, it becomes not just a fear of the law, but a fear of memory. If a Mongolian parent tells a child to speak at home but be careful outside, an invisible line gets drawn inside society. China's new law is perhaps a framework for unity for Beijing, but for minority communities, it can look like a final test to save their identity. In the coming years, the world will see whether this law brings development, harmony, and equal citizenship, or increases cultural assimilation and fear. Because law does not live only in a book. It lives in the classroom, in the language of the home, in the street signs, in songs, in prayers, and in a child's name. And when a state says that everyone must be the same, that is when the biggest question arises. Does a country truly become strong when everyone's identity becomes the same, or when different identities can also live together without fear?
If this video has taught you something new, or if you feel this information should reach more people, don't forget to like and share the video. Your small share can become valuable and useful information for someone else. If you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your opinion with us, be sure to write in the comment box. We read every question and suggestion from you, because your feedback inspires us to create better content. And if you want to keep receiving such interesting and reliable information about business, the economy, and the world in the future, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel GRT Business and also press the bell icon so that you get notifications of every new video directly. At GRT Business, we always strive to provide you with accurate, balanced, and reliable information. Our news and analysis are prepared based on information obtained from various news agencies, public sources, and public opinion. We make every effort to verify and validate each fact as much as possible. But in case of any possible error or dispute, the responsibility lies with the respective sources. Our only aim is to present you with a correct and trustworthy perspective so that you can understand any topic better.